Greetings! In this video I'll be painting a member of the 9th Legion, before they were united with their Primarch Sanguinius. I've always been curious about the legions during the Unification era and the early Great Crusade, and this reference is pretty cool, so I figured why not. This model is unchanged from the Mk.II Tactical Legionary box, though he is aiming a little bit higher than they suggest. To prepare the model, I primed it black, then followed with an undercoat of grey Seer. You could just use a grey primer like the grey Seer Ratling, or a similar colour from another brand if you prefer, though I will be keeping this grey as the armour colour going forward. I'm going for an unpainted ceramite and steel look here, so my first step with the brush wasn't on the armour, but instead on some of the details. I used Bile Red contrast paint over all the cables and the lenses. Contrast paints are super easy to apply in small sections like this, especially over a bright undercoat like grey Seer. Next, I painted in the black details with Abaddon black, namely the undersuit and the weapon casing. Fulgurite copper was used next, for the exposed cartridges in the magazine and some details on the power pack. Next was Iron Warriors, going over the gun chassis, the large cabling on the undersuit, the pauldron trims, and various little details of the armour itself, like the rivets and the earmuff things on the helmet. At this point I applied some gloss varnish to prepare for decals. I placed the Legion ordinal on both pauldrons, akin to the reference material, and placed some similarly simple decals on each knee. Next, I applied a coat of Nuln oil all over the model to add some simple depth to the armour, shading in those recesses and the like. It's definitely a lot softer than the old recipe of Nuln oil. At this point I was thinking I should have gone with a darker base coat for the model. Maybe Celestra Grey would have worked better. Onto some highlighting now, starting with a Mechanicus standard grey as an edge highlight over the Phobos pattern bolt gun. The chain bayonet receives some tiny scratches too. To highlight the lenses, I used Wild Rider red, then Lugganath orange. These are applied in smaller sections as you go up in brightness, with Lugganath orange normally just being a little dot. That's pretty much it for the acrylic paint work. We're on to weathering for the rest of this now. I started with the aircraft engine wash that I used to use all the time. It's a fairly nice brown colour to work in some additional shading, and to add a little bit of a grime effect. Whilst the aircraft engine wash was still wet, I brought in a fuel stains effect, which has a rich clay colour which I thought might help. Turns out this paint's super thin straight from the pot, and it's quite glossy when it dries. Not a problem, the gloss will be drastically reduced with the varnish later. After waiting for the enamels to dry, I switched to Rhinox hide to paint in some little scratches and chips. The glossy finish left from the fuel stains made it harder for the paint to stick, but as a result it went on a bit thinner, allowing me to more easily do precise lines. Next, I used some Ratling Grime contrast paint to add some additional darker chips, before thickly applying it in spaces to mimic dried stains, such as old dry blood. Wanting to bring the shine out on the silver a bit more, I switched to Ironbreaker and applied a thin layer over the skull on the buckle and around various edges on the metal bits. The reference has some vivid stains over the armour, so I brought out an acrylic rust wash and applied it over various bits on the model. I washed the brush and spread it around a bit with some water. Any bits that were dry and the paint teared just adds to the weathering. Now for some gory bits. I used blood for the blood god and applied it in a splotchy method over the chain bayonet, as well as over the armour itself. I used some water to dilute some of it in places, giving the armour that yucky orange colour that you see on surfaces where blood's been wiped off. I also applied it over the body, around the legs, and in various spots where the chain bayonet could fling giblets, or otherwise just from general brutal combat. When that was all done, I applied my usual basing method, painted the edges of the base, and then applied an ultramatte varnish to reduce the gloss and seal everything in. And here we have it, a Tactical Legionary from the 9th Legion during the early Great Crusade. This one was super fun to paint, though I did find it a bit difficult to get the result that I was looking for. I was kinda hoping for the enamel paints to separate as much as they have in the past, leaving little spots and speckles, but they stuck together really smoothly today and the result kind of threw me off a bit. In hindsight, I could have gone over this with a similar method to in my Angels in Carmine video, where I used a toothpick with paint on it, then tapped the paint off to get little splatters. Doing that with a dirt colour may have given me the result I was looking for. That being said, I do really like the finish, especially how fast it is. Starting with the grey and then just doing a few little details meant that it was ready to go for as much weathering as I wanted to do. I want to look into the other legions and see what their earlier schemes are. They may have some similar schemes worth doing. Anyway, that's all I've got for this video. Bit of a different one this time, but that's where the fun lies. I hope you stick around for the next one.